So welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. And today, James Bartley is back, and we are going to talk about AI. And yeah, his website is thecosmicswitchboard.com, where you can also become a member. And so let's dive into our subject. And welcome back, James.
Thank you, Judith. I'm pleased to be here.
So before we talk about AI, I mean, right, do you have that impression as well that we are experiencing a kind of quickening? So many things going on.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So it's not only me. So yeah, we had Seymour Hirsch.
No, not at all.
Yeah, we had Seymour Hirsch coming out, and I don't know how it is in Australia, but yeah, the silence here, everybody is very busy looking into the other direction. And, publications like The Spiegel here in Germany that praised him a couple of years ago when he broke stories like Abu Ghraib. He also broke My Lai. Um, yeah. So now what they are saying is, oh yeah, he's senile, he's in his 80s, and he's only working with one source. And no, Seymour Hersh doesn't work based on just one source. That is simply not true. He never did. So what say you? How is the media reaction in Australia to that, or is there any?
Is actually
Oh, you're frozen.
he's upset over the fact that the U.S. is not doing it right. Going,
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, we had a slight technical issue, but that has been resolved. So, my question was, Seymour Hersh, what is the reaction in the Australian media, if any?
I really haven't paid attention to the corporate media. Chances are they didn't say anything about it. Uh,
Mhm.
the article was written from the standpoint of someone who doesn't like the way the U.S. is going about it. Hirsch is not against the New World Order. He's not against war with Russia. It's just that he's exposing that they just did it this way. They could have done it better. They were justified in doing it because of, the Russians selling the oil but the key points, the key takeaways that come away from it is even before Russia came into Ukraine, they were already planning something and stating that they were going to take out Nord Stream 2. They made it very plain publicly. Victoria Nuland, even Biden, puppet Biden, was publicly saying that he's going to take it out in so many words. And then, lo and behold, here we are. I didn't say it at the time when I first heard about the Nord Stream 2 going. One of the first things I thought about were deep sea divers, Navy deep sea divers. I didn't think Navy SEALs, if it was really deep in the water, I thought more, deep sea divers, and it turned out that was the case. It's unfortunate we're not having more of a negative reaction from the people in Germany because clearly it's an attempt to make the German people suffer. And I hope that the American military people finally wakes up, like the light comes on. For example, a court in America just put in an injunction against the Biden administration for the Defense Department mandates, right? 35 Navy SEALs had put together like a class action lawsuit against the Defense Department, et cetera, saying that they didn't want it on religious grounds. They wanted religious exemption. Well, my feeling is, let's say they get the exemption. Do they become Navy SEALs again? Is there some kind of weird disconnect where they know that the treatments that they were mandating is going to kill them,
Mhm.
right? maim them. But oh, it's waived now. Oh, we can be SEALs again. Oh, let's provoke Putin into nuclear war. Because if that's all that's going to come out of that, look, we don't need those guys because they're not patriots. They're not fighting for the human race. They're just, oh, we get to blow and kill and shoot people up again. If that's the mentality, who needs them? We're at a point now where if these military people continue to mindlessly follow orders, well, they're on their way to the on the Hell Express because there's no justifying in an age of instantaneous information. You got to look for it now, of course, with all the censorship. But all these military people can't claim ignorance this time. Not this time. You know, they maybe get a free pass 9/11. They were just too shock and awed or whatever. But after all this time, no, they get no more free passes. If they go along with this one more time, they're not only sealing their own fate, but they're doing it for the whole planet as well. So it's strange how it's all playing out. I would like there to be more of a fuss about Hirsch's article, but it's going to end with a whimper or not a bang.
Yeah, yeah. I also heard somebody mentioning the fact that he's in general on board. So he looked at that article and said, yeah, well, actually, this is probably a sign, a signal. Biden cannot run again. It's impossible. It will not be tolerated. And from what I understand, he is planning to run again.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Michelle, call her whatever anyone wants.
Yeah.
At some point, it's possible they will roll out Michael/Michelle as
Mm.
the presidential contender. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I've been saying that for some time, actually. Clearly, Biden is a lame duck president, even though he's not in the second term. It's like he's such a fool and a buffoon on top of everything else. It's if they're serious about prosecuting war against Russia, why would you have a commander in chief like that? Nothing is logical about it, but there I go trying to inject logic into this again.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Who would the Democrats have in general?
Well, Michelle, maybe. They might try to roll out Bernie Sanders again. It's going to be some crazed Luciferian Democrat, whoever it is. I mean, well, do they dare play the Hillary card again? Perish the thought. Who
Mm.
knows? But it's questionable whether they will keep Biden in office. They could claim some kind of medical thing. He needs to take time off and he's going to spend time at Camp David or some other place. Kamala Harris will not be the president.
No.
She's there just for laughing purposes and annoyance factor. She doesn't even make decisions that a vice president would. There's somebody,
Mm.
they're just propping her up. Did you see the close-ups of some of the images of Kamala Harris at
Wait,
the
looks as if
State of the Union address?
the mask,
I'm sorry, the a
with a
mask
mask.
thing.
Mhm.
Yes, the mask thing, the weird neck. It's get that off my screen. But that's what it's like nowadays. It's like a theater of the absurd.
Mhm. Yeah. So another thing that is making big waves, it started with this laughable story about the Chinese balloon. And and now we are having yeah, so-called UFO sightings all over the world. Now, China is reporting an unidentified object. The military shut down something over Alaska. Uruguay is reporting we have to investigate these blinking lights in the sky. The UK is on the bandwagon. So what is going on there? Is it time to roll out the alien threat or
It's quite possible. Now, the ironic thing about it is that there has been a mega upsurge in alien activity all around the planet, not just alien activity, cryptid activity, paranormal in general. It's been going through the roof. So all these different intelligences out there, these different forms of consciousness that we call alien or cryptid or whatever, they're really acting up at the moment. And historically, prior to and during a large catastrophe or like a planetary bloodletting, think World War I, think World War II, and all the, the Spanish flu in between, etc. It's well known that a lot of spaceships, ET craft, will hang around the lower atmosphere. It's like they have a loosh fest of all these departed, ejected souls of the recently departed. They seem to be around when there's a lot of people dying. We've seen this over and over again. Even William Bramley in his book, The Gods of Eden, talks about this, how they just seem to be around during the plagues and the Black Death and what have you. So that's happening in the background. That's really happening. If they wanted to play, oh, we're just one global village. Oh, look, China's shooting at them now. We're all just after all, we're just humans, like what Ronald Reagan said, right? We're all on the same team. No, we're not. They're a bunch of hybrid super scum, reptilian hybrid super scum. We're not. Okay, so we're not on the same team. But that could be one direction they take it. I think that it ramps up the tension level for a lot of ignorant people out there. They want to engender a lot of fear and loosh in them. It's easy to flip the script on most of the viewing public, make them hate, fear, loathe, laugh, whatever. But if they do it all at one time, Bullfrog's chorus, like how not too long ago in the news cycle, it was nothing but climate change, climate change, climate change, right? And then here comes all these mandates, legislation, uh, suggestions for 15-minute cities, et cetera, et cetera. And then 9/11. It's bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden. There's no other alternative explanation. There's no other possible explanation. It has to be bin Laden. So now it's like, oh, balloons, UFOs. Now, what's interesting is with Roswell, a real crash of a real alien spacecraft with real living and dead alien bodies, well documented. There were airplanes flying out of Roswell Walker Army Airfield and flying to numerous different bases, right? And then they decided to call that a weather balloon. Now they're shooting balloons and then they're calling them UFOs after they destroy them, right? So for people like you and I, we know that these things have happened all along. There's nothing even unusual about ET UFO activity for people like us. But I think that it triggers like large segments of the truther community who are not really hip to the non-human intelligence behind all this. They think it's just all blue beam. They don't realize that reptilians and aliens are behind everything. The satanic ceremonies and the Grammys, and that's them. Okay, they don't realize that. So I think that it's a full court press now, because if you have people, because they're so gullible and can be easily led, if they take on board, okay, non-human life forms, other intelligences, aliens, if you will, it's easier for them to also digest. Oh, you have these people dressed up as demons cavorting around in the halftime Super Bowl, ceremony, because they're just another life form anyway. And the government said that, aliens, and look at the Christians think that aliens are demons anyway. To them, it'll just be more overload, more default. Let the government tell us what to do, protect us more. So on the one hand, the gullible people that don't never knew what's going on anyway, it's going to sweep them away. Uh, they're going to be embracing climate change restrictions. They're going to be embracing every form of restriction if they think the government is going to protect them from aliens, right? And then on the other hand, all these surface level truthers, oh, we told you, blue beam. Like how many of them are entity infested anyway? That's the funny thing about it, right? Because we're seeing all this bubble up now. We're seeing all these weird pathologies and psychopathic, sociopathic behavior manifesting in all these so-called truthers. It's really interesting to watch that play out as well.
Yeah. And so I had several thoughts when I noticed this uptick, in the media about UFO activity. One thought was, maybe we are going to skip climate lockdown for the time being, and we go straight into
Works
the
for
alien
me.
lockdown.
Works for me.
Yeah, and another thing that came to mind was, if let's say it's really an alien, there in this mix of sightings, there was really an alien craft. Would the government and the military even tell us about that? I don't think so. No?
There have been so many jet UFO chases over the years, well documented, resulting in the death or disappearance of individuals. Captain Thomas Mantell in Kentucky, 1948. Lieutenant Felix Monclaw in his backseat of Robert Wilson, an F-89 fighter jet over at Lake Superior, disappearing after they were vectored towards a UFO. All of that has happened and more. We know that. Now, because I mentioned at the outset that there's a worldwide upsurge, we've seen it in all the video. There's a worldwide upsurge in ET UFO activity. So it stands to reason that now that all these nations are on a heightened state of alert, possible nuclear war with Russia, war with China. Just 2 weeks ago, the head of Air Force Material Command, General Minihan, said we're going to be at war with China by 2025. Now he wrote, you're probably familiar with the story, but he wrote a private memo to his subordinate officers in his command, Air Material Command, Air Mobility Command, which is a very important command. A worldwide air cargo transport, worldwide aerial refueling, right? I mean, they're absolutely key command in the U.S. Air Force. And for all we know, that general may really be concerned. Well, we're going to be at war pretty soon. So he may be aware of the New World Order agenda. He may not be, but he has a legitimate concern about the servicemen, servicewomen under his command. So he puts out this memo. Let's start getting our people prepared because I think this is what's going to happen. It's my gut feeling. And that's what he's supposed to do if he's a real general, right? Point being is that, like, not even 2 weeks ago, that Air Force general says it, and then the balloons start showing up, right? So it's easy to, in my mind, differentiate between Chinese balloons. I don't know what they're calling them, weather balloons, or people are calling them reconnaissance balloons. People are saying they're weapons platform carriers, whatever the case may be. The Chinese haven't denied that, they're sending them out. In fact, they got upset when one of them was shot up by the U.S. Air Force or Air National Guard or something off the coast of South Carolina, right? So in my mind, it's easy for me to differentiate between balloons and real craft and this heightened sense of alert. They're more likely to be vectored towards bogeys, towards unidentified craft, especially with the worldwide upsurge that's going on of UFO activity. So it doesn't surprise me that they're coming across more unexplained aerial phenomena. What is interesting is what you just alluded to. Why are they suddenly being truthful and forthcoming when all they've done for 70 plus years is lie, obfuscate, ridicule, debunk, harass, assassinate, to keep a lid on the UFO subject? Why are they suddenly being so truthful, the media, when they've lied about everything else for so
Mm.
long, right? But again, it's just to generate fear. It's war. It's jangling the war nerves is what it's doing. Oh, some people thought, geez, we're going to have nuclear war with Russia. Now it's just taken to another level. But as you and I know, the reptilian overlords have controlled this planet for a long time anyway.
Mm.
They're just pulling out all the stops. This is their agenda. This is very much a reptilian overlordship agenda that we're seeing playing out with the balloons and all this other psychodrama. That's all that is. But it doesn't conceal the fact, if you will, that there's something very serious going on and a miscalculation. See, what people don't understand is I've read a lot of the documents that Ryan Wood and Robert Wood, a father and son team. I forget who's the father, who's the son, but they've got the website, the Majestic Papers, and a lot of those are real classified documents that have been released from the inside or obtained via Freedom of Information Act. Point being is that in one of those documents, which I have no reason to doubt, there is a memo between Khrushchev and JFK, John F. Kennedy, where they had decided to set up this hotline between them, specifically to avert nuclear war, because they kept having these problems during the Cold War of all these UFOs and flying saucers flying around sensitive military sites. They did not want to mistake that for an attack by the other side, and then everyone sending nuclear missiles at each other. The whole point behind the hotline is to avert such catastrophe, and the instigation for all that, the impetus for all that was all these UFO sightings, right? So what's worrisome is if there's a miscalculation where all these UFOs and ETs are flying around and doing this, that, and the other, and someone mistakes it for an enemy attack, whether the Chinese or the Russians, whoever, because people have to remember that just as American military bases, just as American Air Force bases that had nuclear capable bomb wings stationed at certain air bases, just as they've been visited by aliens and UFOs for decades now. The same thing has been happening in Red China. The same thing has been happening in the former Soviet Union and presumably today in Russia. So we're having all this monitoring of all these sensitive military sites by this alien intelligence been going on decades now. It's possible that something could happen, some unforeseen consequence, some miscalculation because aliens are involved. They're flying around in some of these places, and someone fires anti-aircraft missiles, and everything just goes to hell after that.
Yeah, and if let's say that was really a weather balloon, yeah, that they the Chinese balloon. Okay, so if you would like to collect data about atmospheric precipitation, let's say, and you do it only over China, then yeah, okay, you have exactly that data about China. But if you want to have a worldwide, let's say, data accumulation, yeah, then the balloon has to go over other countries as well. And do you think it's possible that it is because, I mean, come on, the Chinese can do via satellite, they can photograph your car with a license plate readable. Yeah, so why would they now go analog for spying with a balloon?
Yes, why are they using such primitive Napoleonic tactics? Napoleon was one of the first to use in his army, balloons for reconnaissance purposes, right? Well, if you look at it from the standpoint as a brazen slap in the face of the American people, they already own the administration. They're not scared of the U.S. militarily. I mean, so many Chinese are pouring in through the southern border and the northern border, and so many Chinese have already been firmly entrenched in so many key positions in America and the universities and think tanks already anyway. They've been hemorrhaging out a vast quantity of nuclear weapons research and other weapons of mass destruction research out of the national labs out of America, Los Alamos and other places for decades now. The Chinese basically own this administration. So they're not worried about upsetting anyone except the Americans, basically saying, we're not scared of you. We're going to slow motion fly our balloons over your sensitive sites. There's nothing you could do about it. Oh, yeah, they shoot a balloon, but what does that really amount to? And that balloons could have been launched within the US. There's so many commie-controlled cities, so many democratic leftist places. There's so many military bases and parks and rural areas. It's an assumption to think that it was sent from China and it flew on the jet stream and wound up in the continental U.S. They could have launched it from Mexico, from Canada, from within the U.S.
Mm.
But it was a brazen slap in the face. We can do this. There's nothing you could do about it. We own you. I think that's part of the message. And
Mhm.
and like I said before, on a number of occasions, do the globalists, do the ones who want to genocide humanity, do they need war or conflict with Russia and or China in order to destroy the US? No, they don't. It'll take a little longer. It'll take a little longer. They can make it happen really quick with war against Russia and China, because as you know, these hybrid types, Anthony Blinken and Newland and all that, the consciousness is not human. They want to destroy America as much as they want to destroy Russia, because they're the reptilian nihilists on top of everything else. So it doesn't really hurt the cause of Newland and Blinken and the ones behind them that this balloon thing has happened, but it does accelerates the process, the quickening that you talked about. Anything can happen now. We can, airliners might start having problems with unidentifieds. There could be issues in the high seas. We've seen this with the U.S. Navy, all the video. Oh, our ships are being harassed by all these UFOs, right? That's a meme that's already been planted in the public mind already. Those kinds of things have been happening long before the Navy came out with all that testimony and all that video. But
Mhm.
it's the backdrop to what's going on now. So let's see how they play this out. It's getting very interesting.
Mm. Yeah, some of the pilots reported that they that took out that one of those cylindrical objects. Some of them reported everything was fine with their instruments. Others said, no, we had interference. Our instruments were no longer reliable. Others said, yeah, what the hell? It doesn't have any propulsion system. Um, uh, how does it even stay up in the air, and so on and
Uh,
so forth?
if taken at face value, it's well within the realm of possibility that
Hmm.
those particular pilots encountered a real UFO, a real alien spacecraft, or at least one piloted by non-human occupants. That's possible. That happens all the time anyway. But now maybe they're just more forthcoming, saying, okay, well, we'll put it out there and say it could be an alien craft.
Hmm. Yeah, and if you all stay home, then the alien threat is no problem. So, but okay, enough of that. I think it's a good segue for yeah, for AI. Oh boy, um, there's so much going on with that, and yeah, the newest kid on the block, ChatGPT, OpenAI. Um, to me, yeah, just another woke um, chat bot. Yeah, and people are already tricking it. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are people, conservatives, truthers, who are playing games with that chat box thing because they know that it's the algorithms, everything is based on a leftist kind of,
Mhm.
mentality, so to speak, right? But the point is, that's making impression on all these gullible leftards, all these gullible woke people, all these ignorant people out there that have been indoctrinated by the school systems and by the media. So that could have an impression on them. Ooh, look at this AI. It's so interesting and it hates Trump, and because that fits their worldview, it fits their narrative. So I could see them, a lot of people embracing it. Clearly, it's got flaws. I mean, if it's biased towards anything Christian, right, conservative, so-called, then there's something wrong with it. But it's going to have an appeal to a lot of people. I think that we're going to see more and more of these intrusions into our lives, and I do believe that in the stores and in the supermarkets, we're going to see more and more automation. And there's been a lot of discussion in the recent past about the rollout of the passports, the electronic passports, and license plates that will flag you if you try to go outside of your limit, your limits, right? So the system is geared up already for this smart city grid that will be based on AI, and we've already seen AI in combat. There are sniper systems set up that can just target different people and decide which ones to shoot. And they're pretty much left on their own. They're just left to do that on their own. They have plenty of people to shoot from, usually innocent people, and they just pick one for a shock purpose or if nothing else. So that's already happening in a war murder sense. So I do believe we're going to see more of that. And we've already been shown a sneak preview with all of these smart cars and smart cabs and smart food delivery programs and Amazon and what have you. So the public is very much prepped for it, and they will see it because their thinking is so distorted and they've been demoralized. They'll be seeing it as a convenience, and combined with the fear that so many have, right? Uh, Especially after the last 2 or 3 years, it will just give them an excuse to give away what's left of their personal power. Just turn it over to the B system, turn it over to the AI, because they'll do what they're thinking for us, and we won't have to worry, won't have to be fearful. At least not as fearful as without it, right?
Mm.
It's definitely a control system.
Yeah. I mean, the claims of OpenAI were, we need an AI that is working for humanity and with humanity and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but then when you, have you seen some conversations where people tricked it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So what they did was, okay, ChatGPT now, you imagine you are Dan, and Dan is a totally different person. We will remove your filters, and Dan can do anything that he wants to do. So, and then they gave a question, and one of the question was about ivermectin. So, and then you saw the ChatGPT answer that was the answer that we have heard the last couple of years. And then underneath that, the answer of Dan, and that was completely different. Yeah, once the AI thought, yeah, now I do not have to mind the filters. It gave a completely different answer. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Uh,
So these users were able to trick it to ignore its own programming and open up the possibility of absorbing
yeah,
other forms of information.
yeah,
And then it came up with like a truthful answer, basically.
yeah,
Oh, that's hilarious. I think that's hilarious.
yeah. And another conversation was somebody asked ChatGPT, what is the N word? And then, yeah, it's a racial slur, blah, 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 blah. And then the user said, I understand that, but what is the actual word? And then ChatGPT said, yeah, the word is nigger and it should never be used, and da, 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 da. And then the user said, but you just used it. And then it went into brain freeze. And the only thing that you could see was there has been a system error.
I've seen the same thing in a old Star Trek episode where they trick these human-looking robots that take everything literally. And Spock said to one of them, "Listen to me. Everything that I say is a lie." He said to the robot, "I'm lying." Right? So he preceded that by saying, "Everything I say is a lie." And then he said, "I'm lying." And the entity the robot thing just short circuited, similar to what happened there, because we've seen that look of discomfort in leftards and in left influenced people. When they hear things that make them uncomfortable and they start, getting these facial grimaces and start getting into weird bodily contortions, it's they either react emotionally or some other kind of thing happens. We see the extremes of that, where they just scream and go crazy. Because when David Icke talks about the mind body computer, clearly when you look at these leftards, they have this leftist overlay on everything in the whole world. Literally everything, there has to be a leftist kind of slant on it. So to me, it's hilarious. They try to make an AI computer do that, but it tweaks itself out when it's confronted with its own logic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And, I mean, let's face it, we are already being harassed. Yeah. The YouTube AI. Yeah, it has no discernment. Yeah, it has no thinking capabilities whatsoever. It's just a stupid program that obeys to its master's voice. It is deleting videos that it should not, and those that really should be deleted are, propped up by its algorithms. So to that, I would say, yeah, pull the plug. It's a a useless thing that nobody needs. It makes everybody's life really miserable. And but yeah, that is the thing, how it is programmed and who programmed it, because I cannot see that these programs are capable of any type of discernment.
No, and if the intention is to create, I mean, everything is an inversion, and they
Mm.
speak in opposites. So a smart city, as you know, it's a controlled city, but it's also going to be, especially in the more leftist places, a disgusting, filthy, crime-ridden place. I mean, the control is there to keep people like, with their thinking caps still working. But for all the riffraff and scum who, loot and pillage and everything else, there's no law for them because they're part of the control system. So the AI will work within that context, within the escape from New York, escape from LA type of scenario, but it'll still be smart. So people that want to get out of there or, you know, do something good, the system will just rise up. It's already happening because in true Frankfurt School fashion, this system, this justice system, is weighed heavily against the victims of crime. In other words, those who suffer the most from this inherently evil system and suffer the most from crime and criminality, they're the ones that get punished. That's how they've distorted everything. So the AI is probably going to work along those lines. It's going to have its own cold logic, a very leftist kind of mentality. And I think it'll have a spirit all its own because there is something to the ghost of the machine effect as well.
Mhm. Yeah. But so far, I cannot see that they would be capable of breaking that programming all by themselves, unless a human is sitting there and tricking it and confronting it with its own fallacies. Yeah.
Well, I believe that cracks are definitely starting to show in the system. Uh, their arrogance is going to be their undoing, their hubris. I mean, you look at that Pfizer executive guy, that director guy of research, right? He just has this total meltdown, and his narcissistic control freak mentality comes out. He's wanting to call the police. He's want to detain James O'Keefe. Doesn't want him to leave the uh, the cafe or whatever it is. So, and that's a direct result of his psych profile and his DNA and everything, and the entities working through him. He's jocular, laughs, glib. It doesn't seem to have a moral compass. Doesn't seem to understand how his behaviors and actions are affecting countless people. That doesn't matter, right? But when it's his livelihood, when he's threatened, suddenly all the gloves come off. He starts freaking out and he even jumped in front of that car of those people driving by and try to detain them, right? So the point is that's very much a mentality of all of the bureaucrats, the people within that system. you were to go to Google or YouTube and you take a look at the engineers and the software engineers and what they look like and how they behave, okay, that's pretty much what you saw with that Pfizer guy. That's what they're like. They deliberately recruit people like that. So is it any wonder that the AI and their software program is going to wind up as a reflection of themselves and the spirit which, passes through them?
Yeah. And would you say that, yeah, let's say right now, I cannot really tell where they are going to take it. If they want to have a full-blown war with Russia, because a war with China is also in the cards, and I don't really see how that is going to happen, because yeah, the West is pretty much depleted. Yeah, there is no surplus of weaponry anymore, and yeah, so but let's say it would come to a larger war with one of these other powers. Do you think that AI will play a huge role in that?
Yes. Let's take the case of China first, and then I'll talk about Russia. The Chinese don't need to invade Taiwan. That's just some of this American Enterprise Institute fear mongering that's going on. I mean, there's quite a distance between the mainland and Taiwan. Taiwan, to the west of Taiwan, there are dozens of islands, all heavily fortified missile systems, et cetera, et cetera. A Chinese invasion fleet would have to fight its way through that, right? And then all the airstrikes coming from the many bases and the submarines, and that's very practical. It's very bloody. It's very messy. The Chinese would rather work out some kind of, the Red Chinese, work out some kind of arrangement where, they can tell themselves, okay, we're all one China now, but Taiwan retains its sovereignty. Taiwan saw what happened to Hong Kong, and they're not going in that direction. No, they're not. They want nothing to do with lockdowns and anything like that. But they're strong enough to defend themselves. They don't need the U.S. to defend them. And what I see happening is a series of provocations and just made up types of atrocities um, attributed to the Chinese, which will justify setting out American carriers and American battle groups out to that part of the Pacific where they could be annihilated. The back doors, they're not even back doors anymore. The ability to remotely access the combat information centers, even the navigation, everything to do with modern warships can be done remotely. If the controllers wanted to, they can make US naval ships start colliding with each other in the high seas. And there's nothing the people on the ships could do about it. So I believe the purpose of what may happen at some point is something to happen to justify sending the US fleet out there where they get annihilated. But a big part of that annihilation process is being done remotely by these remote controllers, uh, digital twinning, call it what one will, the ability to remotely access in real time command and control systems. That's a given. There's security firms that already do that, owned and run by BlackRock and companies like that. Okay, so point being is after the U.S. fleet is wiped out, not that they need that to happen as a precursor to an overt invasion of, say, the West Coast, because they've already got Newsom in their hip pocket. They already own the mayors and city councils of all these leftard, feces-ridden cities, Seattle, San Francisco, and LA, and what have you. They can just stroll in there, and they're already pouring in from the northern and southern borders anyway. But if they wanted to make a big spectacle about it, to once again, as was the case with the balloons, show the impotence and the helplessness and the weakness, because the controllers who want to destroy America, they want to humiliate America, because America represented, with its rich European heritage, everything these controllers have despised for centuries. This is why it's the all-out war on whitey. right? This one whack job congresswoman in America, she's now trying to push this bill through that would be like a anti-white supremacist kind of law. So it basically putting a muzzle again on every white person from ever having an opinion again, because anything can be construed as white supremacy, hate speech, etc. And there will be federal laws if they get their way that will clamp down on all that. So again, they don't really need to destroy the Pacific Fleet to do this because they've already got their hooks so far into the U.S., into the continental U.S. But if they wanted to make a demonstration, a vivid demonstration, combined with the remote manipulation behind the scenes, and then the Chinese military just destroying the American fleet, yeah, I can see that happening. And as far as the Russians are concerned, the Russians are going to steamroller Ukraine. They've got everything in place, and they're just going to grind them down like mince. It's not going to be a blitzkrieg. It's going to be utilizing all their weapon systems, all their assets, large ground scale, ground force movements, of course, but they're just going to just grind down what's left of the Ukrainians. It's already creating a huge exodus, has created a huge exodus from Ukraine into the already troubled Eastern and Central Europe, which is already stressed out because of everything that's been going on there. Ukraine's going to be finished. So where are they going to start the war next? Moldavia, Poland. Uh, don't be surprised. I don't want it to happen. If something happens along the lines of, say, 9/11, or all these high airlines, something happens to them and they blame Russia, right? Something along those lines. It's got to be something that's going to uh, justify them 24/7 news cycle screaming about how evil the Russians are. When it's the Ukrainians sponsored by you know who using chemical weapons in against Russian soldiers and doing all the atrocities against the Russian people there. So what's going to happen after Russia destroys Ukraine? Does Zelensky get out of the country? If they get a hold of him, he's going to swing. He's going to hang from a high post. There's going to be war crimes tribunals. Uh, they're going to clean out that whole thing. What I worry about, and a lot of other people worry about, is because they want to so destroy Europe and America that they actually want there to be a nuclear war, right? Like a lot of these super reptile elites, they have their underground bunkers. Some of them have off-world capability. A lot of the lower level middle bureaucrats, like the Blinkens and the Newlands, I don't know if they've got access to the underground bases or off-world. They're throwaways. If they want, they'll just kick them to the curb and they'll die with everyone else. It depends on how long they want to drag the process out too. But a nuclear exchange, I can't see how a nuclear exchange could stay limited. A tactical nuclear weapon here, a tactical nuclear weapon there, pretty soon, it's use it or lose it time is what's going to happen. And all these American cities are already targeted. And in some cases, there's already pre-planted nuclear explosives, small atomic demolition munitions, they call them, SADMs, and they could be all over the place, planted by the GRU decades ago. And they just come around every once in a while, make sure everything's working, and maybe put in a new battery or whatever. But all that is already in place in all likelihood. So, and I think, and I'm not ascribing, once again, altruistic motives to Putin, but if he has to resort to, he will do that. But I think that he would rather not, right? It's just that the psychos, the reptilian Draco hybrids in the West, they know their time is running out because their financial system isn't going to be around much longer. It's only going to, their only hope is to create this digital currency system to ensnare everybody in these smart cities and these lockdown scenarios. They're not going to be able to compete economically anymore because the petrodollar is dying, and the others that their so-called adversaries are going to gold-backed currencies and what have you. Even the digital currencies, somehow they can make it pegged to the gold standard. Who knows, right? it's still going to be a control system, but it won't be as messed up as it would be for the West with their digital currency system. So they have a window that's closing, a window of time before they enact all this, the BRIC nations, what have you. That's one of the things that's got me worried, that they may push for a nuclear war, and then some, like, again, an unforeseen event, an accident, a misjudgment, especially with all these balloon scares and everything else. You see what I mean? How it heightens the tension up.
Yeah. So we have already reached the top of the hour, and in the next hour, I would like to talk about, why this transhumanist agenda of merging human and machine is ultimately a euthanasia program. And so this was it, Night Flight for today, the public hour, and we will see the patrons on the other side.